Hello, welcome back. It is week 103 on Out on That Line. I'm Jeff with my co-host Alex. As always, Alex, how you doing this week?
Jeff, it is time to blood up or shut up with this week's album. I coined that before we went on the air. I'm very proud of it.
Well, this week we both received our Spotify Wraps, and I think this is going to go two very different ways for us here during this little discussion. So for those of you that don't use Spotify, and I don't know why you wouldn't use Spotify, but they do a Spotify Wrapped every year where they tell you your most listened to artists, most listened to songs, like most listened to podcasts, kind of everything, your year in review on whatever you listen to on that app. And every year, it kind of, if you're a hipster in any sort of way, you're going to post it on your Instagram story, show people what you were listening to, how cool you are by the artists that you have on there. And in years past, I was the coolest guy on the block. I'll tell you, I had the best bands on there. Coheed was number one every year in a row for I don't even know how long. And then there was this year when I started going to the gym and started listening to a certain kind of heavy style of music consistently. And since I have been, not to, toot my own horn, but been consistently going to the gym like 5 days a week, I listen to that music a lot. So my top artists were, starting with number 5, and this is the only good part, was Turnstile. I listen to a lot of Turnstile because I just always do. They're fantastic. Absolutely recommend going to listen to them. They were number 5, and that's where the good news ends, my friend. So we go from Turnstile, and for some reason I can't find that list again. We go from Turnstile to, I believe, I want to say is As I Lay Dying.
Okay.
If I remember right. And then we move into Wage War. You're gonna love this one. Paleface is number 2.
I fucking knew it.
I listened.
Which means
to the
Slipknot is number 1.
Slipknot is a big time, like by a long shot, number 1. Like by a long shot, man.
God in heaven.
And I will defend Slipknot because having listened to them as much as I have, like in that genre of music, they are the cream of the crop. Like
Sure.
they are the best one.
They're
like
the
it's
kings
not
of
even
new
close.
metal. Yeah, new metal sucks, but they do it the best.
They do it the best. Sometimes you just need to scratch that itch. You know what I mean? Just like there's only certain things that get you going. Like Metallica doesn't make the cut for that gym workout playlist. Like it's just, if it's not scary, and I think you put it one way one time, you were like, it's like I'm trying to run away from it. If it doesn't scare me a little bit, I don't really listen to it in there. So that really skewed the whole Spotify Wrapped experience for me this year. I'll tell you what.
I'm surprised Turnstile wasn't higher.
Well, that's the thing is I feel like they're lucky they made it to number 5 with how much I listened to that other playlist.
That's insane.
Yeah, because I pretty much, if I wasn't at the gym listening to that, I was in my car, like on my way to or from work. And a lot of times I will listen to podcasts instead. I've got, I listen to Babani Jones, The Right Time, 3 days a week. Skimbo Lounge, which just want to say, a little disappointed not to get an episode today. It was lawn mowing day. And there's nothing like the dulcet tones of Alex and Rory to get me through that backyard. If you know what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah. We're happy to help people get through the backyard.
Well, tell me about your Spotify Wrapped, Mr. High and Mighty over there. I see you judging me.
Oh, no, it's not even judgment. It's just a fascinating phenomenon because you a year ago, in no particular order, would have been like Sturgill Simpson, Bruce Springsteen, Casey Musgraves, maybe throw the White Buffalo in there. I know you don't necessarily listen to him a ton, but we'll just say it. And then Deer Tick. You know what I mean? That's a 5 I can riff off the top of my head that you could have conceivably earned last year.
Yeah.
To then have you go to being like in the top 1% of Slipknot listeners this year.
The top 1%. You had that one loaded up in the chamber. You were ready for that.
Oh, yeah, dude. Listen, I've lived that joke because my number 1 artist of the year, I was in the top 1%.
Well, hit me. Tell me. Give it to me. Start with number 5 if you got it.
Number 5 was Prep.
Okay.
Love my friends, my little see, and that's the thing is like people be like, oh my god, Slipknot, and I'm gonna name a bunch of stuff. People are gonna be like, dope. Who are they? Prep comes in at number 5.
Uh-huh.
Men at Work at number 4.
Okay.
Because I hammered a lot of Men at Work this summer, enough
Yep.
to secure the number 4 seed.
That's strong.
That's a strong showing from a band I
Yeah.
didn't listen to before this year. Good for you boys. So yeah, number 4, Men at Work. Number 3, Beach House.
Okay.
Which makes sense. They dropped a huge fucking album at the beginning of the year and just keep hitting that because you basically can listen to it in like 2 parts. So that got a lot of rotation.
Yep.
Number 2, to the surprise of no one, Frank Zappa.
Well, it takes 3 hours to listen to anything he's ever done, so.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You want to listen to it once to enjoy it, once to try to understand it, once to hate it. It's the hat trick with Zappa.
Trifecta.
The only way to enjoy it. Really. Number 1 was Mitski. I was in the top 1% of Mitski listeners this year.
Dang.
Yeah.
Attaboy.
Yep.
Attaboy.
I enjoyed me a lot of Mitski this year.
Yep. Well, that was a good album. I mean, her previous ones were also fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
I've been running all over those.
yeah. Yeah, that's a strong 5. You know, that like encompasses you have a very like kind of eclectic, wide-ranging music taste. Like you'll listen to anything and give it a chance. And that really, I feel like that's a great representation. As a hipster, that would make my heart sing if I had a list as diverse as that. And I unfortunately do not.
Yeah. Jeff's gone metal. Dylan went electric. Jeff went metal.
And I didn't even mean to do it, really. It's just like, that's what works. That's what gets the job done in there, you know?
You weren't thinking about that in the middle of the year.
I wasn't. I considered it. It was, by the time I considered it was March, and I was like, had consistently gone for a couple months at that point, and I was like, well,
too late.
I mean, the die is cast.
Yes.
You know, I don't travel enough in my car, and I don't really just like sit around and listen to music all that often. You know, just when I'm home by myself. You know, so it's just, you know, I don't know. It's just not something that I really expected, but I knew it was coming, and I just figured, I was like, the horse is out of the barn. Nothing I can do about it.
Here it is.
Yeah.
Yep. Enjoy your stinky death metal pit.
Yeah. So
you earned it.
It's just not stuff that I normally would listen to, like that I ever really listen to outside of that. Just like whatever reason scratches that itch.
You officially listened to it, my friend.
I know. I need to just embrace it. Maybe I'll start doing like catering to metalheads, just listening to the most brutal stuff I can find.
You should. Definitely. And slowly, like, just start growing your hair and beard out, too.
Yeah. I'll just really test my, like, optimism for life in general.
Yes.
Just see how deep into that hole I can go.
Good to figure out how much you actually care about yourself in your life. Check in with yourself every now and then.
You know, you have to look into the abyss once in a while.
Absolutely.
Well, do you have any other anything else that stood out about your Spotify Wrap? Because that was really it for mine. You know, anything else you want to give a shout out to?
No, not in particular, but I do have a great segue because we're talking about Spotify Wrapped end of the year. Am I right?
Tell me.
Do you pick up what I'm putting
down?
Tell me.
I am picking it up, but tell me.
The end of the year awards are coming, folks. The best and worst of 2022, where Jeff and I go through our best and worst of 2022. You never know what our take is going to be. The categories are wild. They're out of left field. We can add stuff if we want. We can take stuff away if we want. We can do whatever. It's the end of the year. There are no rules. It's the third act of Jurassic Park. The gates are open. The dinosaurs are loose. This is the year-end show, and you can tell us some shit that you thought and some great experiences and some bad experiences you've had this year, but you can only do that if you get in touch with us through the YouTube page. So stop through, subscribe, leave some comments in a video I'm going to make. That's where you're going to leave your comments. You're going to leave us your lists and let everyone see them and judge you. Maybe start a fight or two. You can do it all at youtube.com/C/out on that line.
That was awesome. That was awesome.
Oh,
That was like the inspirational moment in like Remember the Titans. Remember we used to watch that montage?
oh yeah, get fired up.
Yeah. Anytime you need Tanner to do a couple more shots, throw that on. Yeah, that's what that felt like.
Hit him with a little Herb Brooks. This is our time.
What do you say we get to step it on to the next album and the final album episode of 2022.
Yeah.
So this was one you shot over to me. I don't know when it was, but I'll say 4 days ago, 5 days ago. And I was like, yes, let's do it, because I've heard of this person. I may have heard the music, but don't know. But it's just one singer, right? It's not like the band name. It's one singer. So Weyes Blood is the artist. And the album title is And in the Darkness, Hearts Aglow. So this is the latest, came out November 18th, so it's been out less than a month. How long has Weyes Blood been around? Because I feel like this is one that maybe you were aware of more than me.
Only marginally, so not enough to... I know this is her 5th album, and the last one, Titanic Rising, was really good. I think that came out in 2019. And I remember listening to that and being like, that was really good. And it just like didn't necessarily make the rotation because, as we'll talk about, you kind of don't take a whack at it, listen to a song. You listen to a whole album every time, basically. So that's really the only frame of reference I have. This is the 5th album, yeah.
So it looks like, so that, I mean, 5 albums in, it makes sense because I feel like there is a pretty good level of production value on this album. I'll just kind of say that first. I really had no idea what to expect on this. I didn't know if this was going to be like more rock and roll, if this was going to be like straight singer-songwriter type of stuff, and I didn't really have any preference either way. I was just like, let's just get into it. Let's see what we got here. And it started out, and I was like, okay, this is some like kind of Carole King or like Joan Baez kind of stuff, right off the bat. And I was like, it's not bad. I can get into this. So right off the bat, it's not just me, it's everybody. I was like, hey, that's pretty good. If it's all like this, I think I'm going to have a good time. And then I think as we move along, stay tuned to find out if it stayed like that.
Oh, I love these episodes so much. Oh, we go into it because I thought about this. I'm like, this is going to go either way with Jeff. I don't know. He may see right into its glowing heart and be like, yep, I enjoy this. And it may just whiz right by him. I don't know. And it sounds like she almost had you. Sounds like she almost had you.
She almost did, but I don't want to jump in and just like totally throw every negative thing I can think of at it, but it's just like it didn't end up landing the plane very well for me overall as an album. It started out like very strong. I really did enjoy, especially the first song. I enjoyed the third song, Grapevine. The God Turned Me Into a Flower was beautiful, was fantastic. So, I mean, there were definitely highlights on the album for me, but we get down to the end of this album. Basically, after I think right about And in the Darkness, I think it was okay. After that point, it was not great for me. It was not great. I was just kind of like waiting for it to end. I was just like, how much more do you got to say here?
Oh,
I mean, it's all kind of sounding the same, but I do want to give credit because at its strong points, and especially God Turned Me Into a Flower, I was like, that is some goddamn songwriting. Like, that was a fantastic song and really well performed. And I don't know. There was definitely high points and low points.
Wow. I love it when this happens. I love it so much because, like, obviously there's no burying the lead. I loved this album and I cannot wait to hear, because I have no way to predict like what it is that kind of like smushes it for you. I can't wait. I love it when we're not both sold or damning an album. It's great. It's like last week with White Buffalo.
Yeah, I think, and I think I've heard enough here that I would be interested to hearing other things if the things that I liked, if she does more stuff like God Turned Me Into a Flower on her previous 4 albums, I'd probably love to hear that. I think where she does get into songs like that where it's just, and I'm gonna pull up the lyrics real quick here while I talk about it. It's just the mentality of it. Like, she just, I feel like she was constantly looking at mortality through this whole album. like mortality of a relationship, like not just like a physical person's mortality. It's just like kind of like things are going to end, and I think that sort of feeling kind of wears thin because I felt like it just kept hitting the same sort of emotional chords for me. And then the music wasn't really getting varied enough towards the end for me to really stay tuned in, through the first like half of the album. You go from like a very like kind of Carole King 70s like singer songwriter Laurel Canyon kind of person, kind of sound, and you start moving through it and it starts evolving, getting a little bit more modern, a little bit more like electronic in there. She starts singing a little louder, a little more clearly, and I think it started to really kind of build up to a nice crescendo about halfway through the album. But that come down after was just like, felt like it was off a cliff.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're putting it after what song?
So I think I want to say when I like really noticed it, I didn't love And In the Darkness, but when I really noticed that it was going south for me was Twin Flame.
Twin Flame. Okay. Wow. Okay. Twin Flame. Well, I mean, I have such good things to say about all of these. This is so interesting. This is like legitimately so interesting because you're talking about the Laurel Canyon sound, and specifically who I heard is Joni Mitchell.
Mm-hmm.
Joni Mitchell very much lives in this album's DNA. And I take the point that I think it's the combination of all the songs are like 5 minutes long. And some of the songs do kind of sound the same. That's why you kind of have to listen to the album. It made more sense to me to listen to the album as a whole instead of any one song in isolation, because it all kind of needs to be understood in the same context. But I can see where that's my preference, and then for you, it's Prison. So
I think it's, and I don't mind long songs. I mean, I listen to Coheed and Cambria, like, you know what I mean? Like, that's not, I listen to Meatloaf, I listen to Springsteen. Like, long songs are not an issue. I think the issue for me is that if they don't really go anywhere. So like, I think of the long songs that I love, like In Keeping Secrets of Silent Earth, it's got like 3 crescendos. It's got a whole total part where like it's an entire coda to the song. You know what I mean? It's just like a fantastic moving, like think of Jungle Land by Springsteen. It goes a million different directions. The long songs here didn't go a lot of directions, a lot of the time. So I think that was the problem. I also like remember looking. So I try not to look at how long an album is. I really try not to, because I'm like, I don't want to try to like assume what sort of songs it's going to be. If I've really never heard of an artist, I want to go in as clean as I can. And so I listened to this album the first time without look. I just like opened up the album page, didn't look at anything else, and just hit play on the first song and put my phone down, just like let it go. And so I realized, I was like, oh, it's okay. That felt like about an hour when I first listened to it. And then I looked at the actual length of the album, and it's like, what, 42 minutes?
Yeah, 44.
And then I looked at the number of songs, and I was like, there's how many songs on this? And it's 42 minutes long. I was like, no wonder. It just felt like a long experience, and I feel like I'm going to focus on negative things and not, but I do need to continue to point out that there were some really, really good songs on this that I loved.
Sure. Oh, hey, listen, baby, you don't have to justify anything. If you want to tear this fucking thing apart, I want to hear it. Like, it's crazy how like you can have 2 completely different experiences. Because to me, it did feel long, but I was like happy to just kind of paddle around the pond like a little baby duck. Just make that journey with Weyes Blood.
Yeah.
But if you're not loving what's going on, that runtime is a prison sentence, 100%. So I'll give you that. It wasn't my experience, but I'll give you that. But to me, it was just like such an interesting, what kept me in it was it's singer-songwriter material, and it's set to like chamber pop sounds. This is I guess she grew up in a really Christian household and drew on a lot of that music, and you can tell it's all over this, bells and harps and harpsichord and stuff like that. Definitely hearkening to like a chamber pop style. And it reminded me a lot of when we ended last year with Sloppy Jane Madison.
Yes.
Um, that
I like
was
I like that album a lot more.
that album was great.
Yeah.
But this had like a similar feel to me in terms of being like kind of a field recording. It wasn't a field
Mhm.
recording, but it did kind of feel like maybe she went to a church and recorded this thing. It has that kind of scope and feel to it. Um, and I loved the way the instrumentation
Mhm.
was put. It was like it was structural. None of it like stuck out and
Mhm.
detracted from just like the songs are very much like a whole. The voice doesn't stick out as weak or overly strong. No one element is pulling focus except for these
Mhm.
little blips where she's trying to make like an emotional punctuation because she's singing about a lot of sad
Mhm.
shit on this album.
So I don't know. Tell me if this makes sense to you. So I felt like this was almost a cross between like Mitski and Lingua Ignota. The way that the songs were like because Mitski is much more like a pop rock kind of indie singer. She's like, same deal as like Phoebe Bridgers, where it's like they're definitely more on the like rock side of things and traditional like pop structures. This one I felt like gave me the same weird vibes that I got from Lingua Ignota, but in a Mitski sort of package. Like where Mitski gets like a little bit weird and less like the Best American Girl version of Mitski and more like the Nobody version where
Mm-hmm.
it's just like the just gets a little weird, you know. That's the vibes that this gave me. This didn't give me the same like she belongs in the same category with like a Phoebe Bridgers or like a Julian Baker or one of those ones or a Snail Mail that's like much more like just like traditionally pop oriented.
Yeah.
Like it definitely was weird, and for that reason I'm like into it because I'm like, yeah, do like get weird. Don't make it. Don't if that's what you want to make, do it. But I will say, as you get towards the end of this album, where you're appreciating the comparison to Joni Mitchell, like that is something historically on this podcast I have expressed disinterest in.
Yes.
So I think when for that reason too, and I'm not saying that's you can listen to whatever you want, but for me it just doesn't hit my ear the right way. Just like some people, cilantro tastes like soap.
Mm-hmm. No, that's again, I see that. I'll give you that. Two completely different experiences. The Joni Mitchell thing like really worked for me because
Mm-hmm.
that I first of all to like duck back to the Mitski Lingua Ignota thing. I think I tend to agree that it's and honestly Laurel Hell is the Mitski album that comes to mind when
Mm-hmm.
you were saying that because it had that same kind of like slow, dreamy, austere kind
Mm-hmm.
of thoughtful subject matter and then like the songs aren't in too much of a hurry except for
Mm-hmm.
stuff like Love Me More. Um, and then yeah, the kind of haunted chamber stuff that Lingua Ignota does. So like that scale, I can see that, and I was just so into that. And then on top of it, the singer songwriter approach to the lyrics,
Mm-hmm.
where it's big yellow taxi type stuff. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't like Joni Mitchell, once again, this becomes your prison.
Yes, and I think that's just where that cutoff is for me, is where it gets too much like that, and I think the kind of back half of the album it was a lot like that. I'm honestly surprised that I liked the first song so much because I really historically have not really been into that kind of music, but it's like that was just a straight up kind of good pop song. Just like a really good like classic Carole King style singer-songwriter at a piano kind of song. And for me, I was like, okay, I can enjoy that. And I was figuring, I was like, is she a pop singer? Is she a pop artist? Because I'd never really listened to her. And it turns out, no, that's not the case. She could be if she wanted to be. Definitely has the voice for it. That was the other thing I noticed too, is that it was never the worst thing to listen to because she's a great singer too.
Oh yeah.
Like that's something that no matter what she decides to sing, I think she would be fine doing it. But that was, and I forget, I think it was right around in the middle where it's like it really picked up and she really kind of started to let her voice shine. And I was like, okay, well, if this is what it's building up to, this is going to be fantastic. And then I don't know why. I just feel like it really just fell far off at the end.
Well, and I'll totally agree that God Turned Me Into a Flower is a turning point. It's a stake, like it's a mile marker in this album. When we got to that point, I couldn't even like take notes about this song. I have like nothing to say other than one lyric that crystallizes the beauty of the whole thing to me. It's the curse of losing yourself when the mirror takes you too far. Like, I will pour over that for the rest of my life. Like, it's just such a beautiful, heartbreaking song. And based on Titanic Rising, I knew we weren't going to, like, stay locked into that. And sure enough, everything does kind of start to morph. And 2 songs later, in Twin Flame, it's completely different. There's a drum machine. And it's, like, very Angelo Badalamenti, David Lynch, Twin Peaks kind of dreamwave. And when Beach House was your number 3 artist of the year, it makes sense that you'd like that. And, you know, big Twin Peaks lover and all that. But yeah, it does. It veers off in a lot of different directions, which I like, but I can see if, judging by the length of them, you're not into it, then yeah, you're going to have a problem. You're going to have a bad time.
And it was just, I don't know. I feel like it was just one, I listened to it. Let's see, this one I think was 4 times, you know, so I'd run it through a few times. And every time I hit that point, it might've been just like first impression got the best of me. But every time I hit that point, I just kind of felt myself dreading it. 'Cause I was like, oh, well, we're about to stop having fun here. You know, I just like couldn't shake the feeling. And it just never, like, I tried to like listen in and be like, oh, maybe there's a part I can find that I'll really be happy with. And it just never, I don't know, that whole back half of the album just never really did it for me.
Well, and I don't think those same kind of things obviously didn't get me down. I was really struck by like the scale and scope of this as a Beach Boys guy, a Brian Wilson guy. This had it had like a Brian Wilson production touch, not quite as weird. And when we say this is a weird album, it's erring more on the side of quirky, and it's weird without being like King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard weird, or like Good Vibrations weird.
Yeah.
It's really not that far off the map conceptually, but it has a weirdness to it without being silly goose and without being way too over the top, which is nice. It's such a nice kind of contrast to a King Gizzard, which is they put out a punishing volume of music and it's all so complicated and so cool, but it's just like a punishing amount of music sometimes. So for that reason, like it felt like a big production. It felt like something, again, chamber pop kind of approach to the singer-songwriter, experimental. She's been in other experimental bands. That hit for me because I'm a douchebag. So of course I was going to love this. Were you high?
Well, I think and to quote you, for people that like this kind of thing, it's the kind of thing they like.
Ooh, you got me.
Yeah, you know, and I'm not gonna bash it. It just like fell flat for me, like completely and totally dead flat towards the end. And we always talk about needing to close an album strong, you know, and I don't think it was quite strong enough in the first half to prop up totally the back half. I'm gonna say stream it because I do think God Turned Me Into a Flower is worth the price of admission on this album, just that song alone. So I'm going to say stream it if you're into, you know, this sort of, you know, singer, songwriter, independent artist, you know, sort of thing. Like, give it a shot. This might just tickle your funny bone in just the right way. So I'm going to say stream it with a high recommendation for songs 1 and 4.
Okay. Almost exactly like the episode last week where it was given a conditional stream it by a skeptic.
Mm-hmm.
How gentlemanly of us.
We keep things equal.
You know, we just like to make sure that everything's above board here. Well, and
Yes.
obviously, I'm going to say stream it. Um, I, again, was just really attracted to how large and lush it was. She wasn't trying to reinvent the wheel
Mm-hmm.
or try to steer into any one kind of genre and be like, I redefined dream pop. It's just it feels experimental. It feels like an exploration. She's walking out. A lot of the lyrics are almost stream of consciousness without being babble. She just
Mm-hmm.
walks a really fine line of craftsmanship, and I just appreciate something that's soulful and weird and well executed. It's just kind of like a beautiful album. As beautiful as the cover art to me. So I loved it, and I'll say stream it.
You know what this cover art reminded me of? That what's the running up that hill? What is that?
Kate Bush.
Kate Bush. That whatever the album. What is it? Hounds or something?
I don't know. And I'm making a deal with God, and I'm running up some
I
hill.
hate that song.
I hate
that
that
song, Wuthering Heights. The other one that she
Not
does
going
that's
away.
really famous. It was on. I think it was on TikTok, and I would hear it all hours of the day. I hate Kate Bush, and I think that this album cover, since you pointed it out, reminds me of that. Hold on. I'm gonna pull it up right now. These people can wait a goddamn second before we wrap this show up. You know what? Hold on. Kate Bush, Wuthering Heights. Yeah. Yeah. If you go look that up, folks, look up like the cover art for Kate Bush and then look up the cover art for Weyes Blood. And you'll see if you've been traumatized by Kate Bush's music that maybe I'm just going to give you a trigger warning on this album cover here.
And I'm running up a hill. And I'm making a deal with God.
God.
And I'm running up a hill.
Well, make sure you tune in next week for the end of the year episode. Make sure you let us know what you want to hear. Maybe there's an album came out the end of this year that we never got to that you want us to start next year with. So send it over to us. You can do that on the YouTube. You can do that on the Instagram. You can do that if you have our cell phone numbers. Send it right over. Whatever you want to do. Alex, do you have anything else you want to cover this week?
I think we've covered it all and more. Jeff, take us out.
Until next time.